This podcast is brought to you by Live Intent. Whether or not Google ever decides to remove cookies, Live Intent's Hero, that's helping identity reveal opportunity, offers a solution that transforms non-addressable audiences into addressable inventory using first-party data. Hero is scalable, interoperable, and integrated with major industry players, providing a robust framework for navigating this new era. See how Hero can help you quickly unlock your inventory at liveintent.com/hero. That's liveintent.com/HIRO. Welcome to the Marketecture Podcast. We have a great show today. We have Mark Mannino, a executive with a lot of experience in retail media, most recently at Flywheel, which was bought by Omnicom for $835 million. So we want to hear about that, why they did it, what the strategy is, and what's going to happen next. And then we have news of the week, and it's been a big news week. You know, X suing advertisers, Google losing an antitrust case, a bunch of other stuff to talk about. It should be pretty juicy. So I want to remind everyone, we launched our new newsletter this week. So the Monopoly Report came out on Monday with an article about the origins of Google's monopoly problems through the DoubleClick acquisition. And then, surprisingly, we had to do a second newsletter the next day when Google lost its antitrust suit on the search side. So we have two great pieces of content. I suggest subscribing for free at monopoly.marketecture.tv, which admittedly is a lot to type, but I'm sure you can find it. All right, let's go to the actual show. So I am joined by Mark Mannino and Eric Franchi. Mark, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We got two Staten Islanders.
That's right.
Are either of you from like the dangerous parts of Staten Island? Because they have like a lot of murders in that small island.
No, they're not. It's pretty safe. Unless you go down to Midland Beach on a Friday night, you're usually okay.
Is the pizza as good as they say?
It is. We should do a tour one day. I've sent a few people on tours. Yeah, we could go to Lee's Tavern.
Yeah, because I'm scared to go there on my own. They, it's not friendly territory for me at night.
If you're rolling with Mark Mannino, you have no problems.
Yeah, we need to see if my accent comes back. My wife says when I go over the bridge, it comes right back. I don't know if that happens to you, Eric. But if I say things like the South Shore, then we know it's back.
Tremendous. Anyway, let's get going.
Yeah, we should get going. So, Mark, you and I have known each other for a really long time, since before times. But we had lunch the other day, and we were talking about retail media and about Flywheel, and I really wanted to bring you on for that reason. I think probably a lot of people don't know what Flywheel is or why it was bought. I'd love to get that perspective.
Yeah, it was clear from your questions that you wrote down that you don't even know what it is. So I'll give you guys a little overview. So I joined there about 3 years ago. I was at Amazon for about 9 years. I mean, Flywheel was basically my biggest client and customer at Amazon. They were spending the most. They were the most sophisticated. I mean, what we did was, and what they do, is they help brands grow on retail marketplaces. So they help, starting with Amazon, but now going everywhere, really, Walmart, Instacart, all the Criteo and Citrus ad retailers. So they work basically with brands who want to grow in retail media. And as you know, that space is growing really fast. I mean, I think they did, why did Omnicom buy them? I think that the holding company agencies were pretty happy to let these upstart Amazon type agencies focus on sponsored ads, which is kind of the search side of things. But once they started to, and we started to get pulled into upper funnel, video, things like that, which is their bread and butter, started to get really, really threatened. I mean, someone told me at Omnicom that when we had some clients where we competed a little bit. And when one of their big clients told them that all the Amazon video spend was going to Flywheel, that's when they got a little bit scared. So
always a good way to get an M&A process starting is to give the buyer a little bit of a black eye. So what does it mean? So you said you help brands grow in retail media. Isn't that just about throwing money at the retailers? What do you actually have to do? No,
it's actually you throw a lot of money at it, right? But that's only because it grows sales, right? The key piece that we did, besides the stuff that everybody on this podcast could be used to, the fact that we bought media, we bought sponsored ads, which is the search side on Amazon and on any of the retailers. We bought display, we bought video. But the key piece that you're trying to do is you're trying to grow the retail side. You're trying to grow how many products you're actually selling, okay? So we spent a lot of time really figuring that out. It's very sophisticated. It's getting very complex, right? And it's more than just, the table stakes right now is my product detail page, right? So if you search on Amazon and you search on Walmart, you search for the same types of products, and you go down the line of different retailers, you'll see varying levels of quality on product detail pages. That's really important. When you look for a product you don't know much about, you're going to read the reviews, you're going to read the content, everything. But that's all table stakes. Everybody knows how to do that. Where it's really getting complex is actually it's getting into, I guess you'd call it supply chain type stuff. So what types of SKUs are you selling? Where are you placing your items? So I'll give you a good example. If you're selling a product, in all the grocery stores and Walmart, and it's your favorite SKU and you've got it priced right, and Walmart decides to do a discount for a week or two, right? Well, Amazon will price match you, right? So they'll let's say you like to sell for $2 and Walmart sells it for $1.50 because they want to get people into the store. So Amazon price matches you, and suddenly your price everywhere goes down and your revenue goes down, right? And that's a challenge. So when you're talking about retail strategy and where we really got complex is how do you design kind of custom SKUs? So we worked with partners who would literally allow us to, in real time, create customized SKUs that are only sold on Amazon. And so, for example, let's say you sell a product that has chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, right? You may sell chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry individually in Walmart, but on Amazon, you can combine them into a batch and put them into a custom SKU that can't be price matched anywhere. So you can really control the pricing. And that's the really complex things that we're starting to see people are doing.
People call that the Neapolitan strategy.
Exactly. That's it. No, we didn't call it that, but that's a good idea.
What is a product detail page? Isn't that just copywriting? Like what's going on there? Is there science involved?
Yeah, there's tons of science. You need to really, you need to make sure that when people search, that the words and everything that you've got on that page are encouraging your product to win the organic side of search. Also, you need to really describe the product. I mean, go to any product detail page these days, even if it's unknown brands that are coming in from China sellers or other sellers. They're providing a ton of detail, right? Even if you're buying an iPhone case or an iPhone cord or something like that, the amount of detail that people are providing is incredible because it's making you get up in the listings on the organic side. It's allowing customers to decide to buy you, and it's really important. So there's a lot of science behind it. There's also now a lot of AI behind it. I mean, even 3 years ago, we had a lot of people manually writing this stuff, and I saw in real time it translate to, hey, let's just let generative AI create these things. We might have to optimize it a little bit, but it's getting to where that stuff can. I mean, we were creating, thousands of product detail pages for retailers at scale that they would just put right on their site because they needed to up the quality.
And is it differing per retailer? Like, could the same SKU have different products?
Yeah. There's two things. One is the wording may be different, but the most different piece is the different parameters they put in there. Things like, the easiest things to think about are size and color and things like that. But there's lots of different parameters you can put in there. And Walmart may have 30 different parameters. Amazon may have 50. Best Buy may have 150 different parameters, right? So for the same product, just because of what that product manager decided. So you have to really think about it, and you have to train both your people and your tech to provide the right information to the right ones.
Your services you're describing go way beyond media. We always talk about commerce media and retail media on this show. So were you being pulled into that by the brands? Were the brands saying, hey, we have a bigger problem than just spending money. We need help with all these other things? Or was it push or did it vary?
I think for Flywheel specifically, it was probably more push because the founders of Flywheel were very retail focused. Duncan Painter, our CEO, and we called the company a retail company that happens to buy ads, right? So we really, really focused on the retail side. I think everybody else is, the holding company agencies are getting pulled that way. But generally, we thought of ourselves as a retail company. If we didn't, what we said internally, and this doesn't happen because you have to buy ads to drive sales. But we like to say that if we didn't have to buy ads and can still grow your business, we would, right? And we did that in micro instances. For example, let's say you're buying search and you're top of page for a certain search term. You can get yourself to where your organic, that'll pull your organics up. You could start to get really creative with how many slots do you need. So we would really pull back on spend at times because we could get the same return with organic.
Can you expound a little bit on what you said at the very beginning about getting pulled into video budgets and other sort of higher end, higher funnel type activities?
Yeah.
How's that evolving just in general? Not necessarily just Flywheel, but how's that evolving in terms of budgets?
Well, the retailers are pulling us that way, right? So Amazon obviously now has Thursday Night Football. They just bought the NBA. Prime Video just became, ad enabled. So they, and by connection, their sales team and Amazon ads are getting pulled and pushed into upper funnel, because they realize at some point the search side is going to cap out, right? And the growth will just grow like their overall business. So that's and that's how they're going to compete with Google and Meta. And that's driving people like Walmart, right? They bought Vizio, right? Or they're buying Vizio. I was surprised, actually. I think next thing they might look at is something like Roku, right? So they can get more and more of that scale. So that's causing brands and agencies and partners to think fuller funnel. And because we were the best at, and what the brands want us to do is connect the lower funnel, right, to the upper funnel. It's something no one's ever been able to do before. And now you can literally run an ad on Prime Video and see when that person actually connects 2 weeks down the road, a month down the road, 3 months down the road. And you can see the impact of that.
And presumably, Amazon's not selling those videos on a CPC or CPA basis. So what does the contract look like? Like if you do, I guess what I would call it upfront with Amazon, you're buying a whole bunch of TV, premium, high CPM, et cetera, and you're buying product listing ads and a bunch of other stuff that's very performance-based. Do they play those against each other in the contract?
No.
They're just line items. If you don't buy TV, that's fine. You just buy PLA and vice versa. They don't have any minimum spends or discounts or anything like that.
No, they didn't. I mean, the main place that all of the holding companies and all of the big partners negotiate for is we would push on how much we committed to spend overall with Amazon, how much we committed to spend on the DSP. But that got you very limited real advantages. I mean, it got you like a really good DSP rate, for example, and you might get a really good guaranteed CPM on the video side, but it wasn't, I never felt it was a quid pro quo. And there wasn't really a hammer that they could bring back on you. I think Amazon's trying to upend that a bit, right? Because they want it to be performance based and they want a lot of this to push. So they'd love this to be a lot more fluid, right? I'll give you a good example. When they launched Prime Video ads, they actually launched it at the worst time of the year they could do it. They launched it after all the upfronts were signed. So then they went to all the agencies and said, can you please give us $100 million or $200 million? And the agency said, everything's been allocated. So now this year they're in the flow. They actually did it. They actually left new fronts and went to upfronts, which is a big move for an Amazon.
Right. I hear a lot of grumbling in the CTV industry that Amazon ads are flooding the market and prices are coming down. That may be true or not. I don't know. So is Flywheel like a one-of-a-kind company? Or is it a trend? Do you expect there to be these sort of tech-enabled merchandising and retail media combined agencies within all the holding?
So there's a lot of small ones. There's a few that we would compete with all the time. You hear companies like PackView and Sky, who are all at different.
I thought Sky was really just tech, like
SEM. But they all do a combination of tech and a little bit of managed service at varying levels, right? If someone at Sky would get on the line with me and say, Mark, we don't do any of that, right? We actually came at it. We had a lot of tech at Flywheel, but we also had a large team because we felt that you had to be really consultative about this. And you also, because the retailers are at varying levels of sophistication, you have to do some things manually, right? I mean, think early days of DSP, I was the bidder, right? I used to call ValueClick. I used to call Collective and change price every day and drive them crazy, right? Because we had to be manual before RTV, right? So now there's tons of APIs in Amazon and Walmart. Some of the others, there's not, right? So you have to do this stuff manually. And then you have to explain to your customer what's happening, right? So back to your question, I think Flywheel is a bit of a unicorn in that space because we fit really well. We had enough tech, but we fit really well into a holding company.
Right. So just for the listeners, Sky is the company that was formerly known as Kenshu. Right. Yes. So they went from search to commerce, which seems like a really good pivot for them.
Yeah.
It just seems that agencies are in a good position for CTV because, they've long had, just the TV buyers, right? Like that's, been a sort of, early center of excellence dating back to pre-digital. It seems to me that they have to have, you know, a strong like retail commerce center of excellence just with the way that the market is going.
The forward-thinking ones, right? I think Publicis and WPP are good examples. And Omnicom bought Flywheel because they felt like they were a little bit behind, and now those three are kind of the leaders in the space, right? Because they have that, and I think, you know, as these budgets start to converge, right? So early days when it's just search, it's mostly trade spending that's moving into this, and now as you're getting into, hey, I need you to buy NBA. Or I need you to buy upper funnel. It's starting to converge of the budgets and the sources of the budgets and things. That's where the holding companies sit, right? And they can do things that Flywheel never even thought of doing, right? Like, so that's where I think Omnicom's really well positioned, because they have all the knowledge that the Flywheel team brings. And then they have all the experience of doing these big global buys and, you know, and commitments that Omnicom's used to doing. So I think that, you know, that's where it's going, and they're all going to need to figure it out, because it's moving from just trade spend to being all spend is going to be addressing this.
Yeah, it's good. It's a really big change in the marketplace and the way people allocate dollars. You spent years at Amazon. You were the lead for U.S. sponsored ads in the U.S. I'd love to get some perspective on what it's like inside Amazon when they think about ads. Is it just opportunistic? Like, hey, there's this big pot of money, let's get it? Or is there some grand vision for how Amazon will interact with the outside world? Anything you can say, obviously nothing confidential, but like.
Amazon doesn't do anything unless they can be really big and think big about it and grow it, but think different a bit, right? So I joined in 2012, and I was mostly on the programmatic side of the team business. Really early there, and then was leading the UI for the DSP, and I owned the P&L for the DSP for a long time. They're patient, they move fast, and they're relentless, right? So we just kept building the business over a number of years. For most of those years, no one even knew we were doing this, right? We were trying to get people to pay attention to us. People knew we had some potential. And then suddenly, if you remember, like 2017, 2019, suddenly it just came up and they're the third largest ad player in the world. So now I think they think really big about it, right? I don't think in 2012, I could be wrong, I don't think in 2012 they thought they'd eventually own NBA rights and NFL rights, but they'll just continue to think big and watch where it grows. Early days, we were worried they'd just forget about us, or Bezos would just say, hey, this isn't worth it, shut it down. Now they're such a big part of the profitability for Amazon. It's a requirement. The amount of pressure on my friends over there is incredible these days.
Well, they're known for their pressure. So I guess I ask you a question a different way. Like, obviously ads are higher margin than retail. Would Amazon be okay if like all their money came from ads and retail lost money? Or do they feel like they have to have retail or else the ads?
No. It's a retail business.
It's a retail business, but they're making far more money on advertising.
Yeah, but they need the retail business drives the relevance of the ads business, right? I mean, even how they think about the NBA and the NFL, the day it moves over, it's why I kind of laugh at this phrase retail media, because the day Thursday Night Football moved from Fox to Amazon, it didn't magically become retail media. It just went into Amazon's P&L, right? But the world counted it as retail media, right? But over time, they're going to transform it. And so the ads that you see are going to be really retail enabled. You'll be able to just click a QR code and you're going to be able to buy something, right?
I have one very specific question that I've always been wondering about, which is Whole Foods part of this package? Is Whole Foods data useful for advertising, or are the products too weird?
I don't think the products are too weird.
Well, they're not. You can't buy Pringles at Whole Foods, right? So you can't advertise P&G.
Yeah, I mean, the data was in there, but it's not a big part of the thought process within Amazon ads, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, if you're selling ads to some hemp oil company, Whole Foods is gold.
Yeah, I wanted to double back on your question before, Ari, which, it's an interesting thought exercise of, can you just like really become a complete ads business and not worry about the retail side? And obviously, Mark's counter is, that retail is just so much of the business. It is the business, and it's so large. But I think it's pretty interesting in that because ads are so profitable, Amazon can do, and any of these guys that are entering into the retail business, like Amazon can do interesting things with its pricing on retail to make that stronger and stronger and really be aggressive and compete on price in retail, because the ads business is so large and so profitable? Can they just become even more aggressive and benefit the consumer with pricing because they've got this like large subsidy of ad profits?
So the one common theme, and if you go back, Jeff Bezos had videos and said this in 1998, is lower prices. The one thing that he knows that customers will always want is lower prices. So everything you do in ads and all the profit you drive is to figure out how to reduce prices for your customers, right? So to your point, the thing that kind of's been hanging out there, would the government ever like break up Amazon, right? And I think they could probably do it to AWS, right? And say, hey, you need to be a separate company. But I don't know how you would ever take the ads business and break it up out of the retail business, because I think that's what you guys are getting. I think it's it's a virtuous cycle what they do. I'm not going to say flywheel, but it is.
I was going to say it's a flywheel.
All right. What's next for you, Mark?
Well, I've been enjoying the summer. My daughter's about to looking at colleges, so I've been doing that while I've been looking at a lot of interesting opportunities. So I've been, taking my time, and I'm looking for, another really fun and exciting leadership position like I just had for the last 3 years. Flywheel was a wild, fun experience, and I enjoyed the team, and I'm looking for another one like that.
Sounds awesome. Well, congratulations on the exit, and thanks for being here. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with the enormous amount of news of the week. I think we may need to have like a multi-hour Lex Friedman style podcast, go 7 hours on this stuff. But we will not do that to you, our dear audience. We'll keep it brief. We'll be back. This podcast is brought to you by Iris TV. Streaming is now bigger than broadcast and cable, but we all watch our favorite shows and movies on hundreds of different devices and apps. Iris TV makes it easy for advertisers to target viewers with precision at scale across all these platforms. They do this by enabling AI to analyze millions of videos from the leading publishers to create the largest contextual data marketplace for streaming. By building their campaigns with Iris-enabled data, brands like Carl's Jr. are driving higher lifts in awareness and sales while publishers are generating higher yield. Learn more about Iris TV and explore their private marketplace deals by visiting iris.tv/PMP. That's iris.tv/PMP.
And we're back with news of the week. For a second, I was getting excited that I was about to enter into an 8-hour segment of discussing news with two of my favorite people. But alas, we'll keep it punchy and quick. But there's a lot to go through. At the top of the docket, we've got probably the big three of the news of the week. So Google is a monopoly. X sues GARM and brands, and Analytics finds some dirty stuff in addition to a bunch more. So let's go to the top of the docket. I'll read this quote from Alison Schiff at AdExchanger, and she is quoting Judge Amit Mehta in the ruling against Google and in favor of the Department of Justice. And I quote, "Google is a monopolist." So basically everything that, our industry has been crowing about for many, many years seems to have been validated, at least as it relates to search, by a judge in the DOJ. Ari, you dropped an epic newsletter about this, and you've just been following this for the longest time. So I'll let you react and give more thoughts now that it's been almost a week.
Yeah, sure. First of all, the opinion from the judge is very detailed, very well written. I'd suggest if you really do care, it's worth spending an hour reading it. Effectively, what I did was read it and summarize the parts I thought were interesting. The headlines here is that first, Google search is a monopoly that was declared based on market share, based on its behavior, a bunch of other things. Secondly, text ads were considered a monopoly, and the judge pointed out that text ad prices have been regularly increasing, whereas other types of products, including PLAs, he specifically brings up product listing ads, have not. So one nuance is that the judge did not declare search ads to be a monopoly. So the judge pointed out that Amazon has a very large search business, and so search ads as a general category, including Amazon, including Yelp, etc., are not a monopoly, not covered by the remedies, but text ads within search are a monopoly. And then finally, and probably most importantly, the exclusive distribution agreements were seen to be a key part of maintaining that monopoly. And that's where probably everyone is speculating about the outcomes, the remedies that will be asked for in a separate trial, will have to do with ending those exclusive arrangements or preventing them from using their incredibly large cash hoard to maintain those. As to what that means in detail, nobody knows. A lot of people are speculating. We have no idea.
So Google is a absolute leader in search. Number one, because it's Google and it started in, the sort of V1 desktop era. They solidified that position in the mobile era through A, acquiring Android, B, having that, $20 billion distribution deal with Apple. So seems like A, that distribution deal with Apple, that one probably is, going to go away or might be part of the remedy here.
Yeah, certainly. They're paying Apple $20 billion a year for the default position. I think that absolutely gets altered in some way. It could be a choice screen that consumers choose which search engine they want. It could be also economically switched to a pure rev share as opposed to a guarantee so that potentially other people could compete. Although in the end, we know that Google has the most popularity among consumers and Google monetizes better than anyone else. So these are self-perpetuating problems. It's also noteworthy that I think in the agreement, I may be misquoting, but I believe the judge found that 50% of searches were not even subject to any competition because they were from Chrome or Android.
Exactly.
So Apple then adds another 20 or 30% on top of that. And so does Mozilla. You have some people online, like the Jason Kint type people who are really anti-Google, suggesting that Chrome and Android spin out is the correct solution here. And it's possible. I mean, it's the government. They can do what they want. It'll be a tough fight and it'll probably take years to work out.
Does this just screw like Firefox? And I felt bad for Yelp because they've been suing, Google for a long time, saying that Google just came in and kicked them out. And they got literally specifically said, hey, this is fine.
Yeah, and also Yelp lost a previous ruling from the judge that was around the snippets aspect, the using the Yelp data in the search results. So Yelp already got kicked to the curb previously. And yeah, it could be pretty bad for Mozilla. Mozilla makes, I think, the majority of its revenue from this, whereas Apple will be fine ultimately.
Yeah, I wonder if the potential beneficiaries are actually the LLM-based search companies. Yeah. This gives them a lane that didn't exist last week. And this could change.
Yeah, because I guess like Google has to open even Android up to let them be an option, right?
It's happening at the exact same time that we may be involved in a platform shift from search to AI. What I've said this in a tweet, but I really believe it. It's like, put yourself in the mindset of the guy or girl at Apple who's in charge of search. You probably are thinking pretty big. You probably have a big whiteboard out there with some of the best minds in the world saying, if we're losing 20 billion, what can we replace it with that might not just be a rev share deal with Bing? What can we do here? We have a couple of years to work it out. I think it's an opportunity for huge innovation.
Yeah, for sure. So that's what I think the sleeper is here. And then number two, I think probably central to everybody that listens to this podcast, you think this sets some kind of precedent for the ad tech trial?
I think it's pretty separate. The only thing that could be interesting is if Google comes to the table to negotiate, and once they're at the table, everything gets put on the table. So you could imagine a world where the DOJ asks for something radical, like removal of Chrome, and Google says, we'll just get rid of DFP, and everyone will be happy. But I don't know if that's actually likely. There's also the political aspect to this. It depends on who's the president and what the administrator's point of view is on business issues.
Right. And to be clear, Ari, this had nothing to do with cookies or any of that.
This has nothing to do with cookies. The case is very easy to understand. Google has the most market share in search. Therefore, search keeps getting better because it gets more data. Therefore, they can pay for distribution, which gives them more search volume. And it's a cycle.
Okay. This is juicy. So X sues GARM and the WFA, claiming antitrust along the way. They are also suing some of its members, including CVS Health, Mars, and Unilever, alleging the group abused its influence over marketers and ad agencies to discriminate unfairly against X, prompting a boycott. That was a line from Sarah Fisher of Axios, who dropped the news. So there's some people that are saying, effectively, X, Elon and Linda are suing advertisers for not spending money on X. You guys agree?
What a bunch of losers.
So where do we begin here? Because there's two sides of this, and I think it's important to give both sides a little bit of airtime here. So Ari, go ahead. Steelman one side.
Let's start with the basics. If you had two advertisers, let's say Mars and CVS, and they called each other and said, "Hey, we should both stop buying X," that would be a antitrust violation. You can't do that. So what people do when they need collective action is they create nonprofit industry groups, which are regulated by attorneys, and that take actions like setting standards or rating things or choosing vendors like a GIF. And so in this case, the GARM is an industry organization, which presumably had some guidelines and legal rules about how it was supposed to do its business and inform its advertisers about what it did. And you would have to imagine that in order to be liable in this case, they would have had to have real malfeasance. They would have had to do something, really incorrect to make them liable in this case. Like, let's say they're successful. Let's say X wins. GARM goes bankrupt. They get $1 billion settlement from GARM. It goes away. No one's going to advertise on X ever again. Like, what's the outcome that they're expecting? I think that this is the nail in the coffin on all brand advertising on X.
Okay, so that's one side of it. The other side of it is that X would not be suing if they didn't believe that some of this, alleged malfeasance happened. So if that happened, that's arguably not a cool thing.
I would push back on that. I mean, Elon is known as a habitual liar. He's caught in millions of lies. He sues people all the time. And he's part of this right-wing conspiracy theory-minded idea that conservative voices are being silenced, which is not true and is led by Jim Jordan and other radicals in Congress. They even quoted Jim Jordan in the suit, who's a notoriously unreliable person. I think it's absolutely possible this is a frivolous lawsuit that's just meant to rile up the right-wing base that he and Linda seem to enjoy spending time with.
Okay. You just took that apart pretty nicely. What'd you think of the video?
I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but I have opinions. There's this joke going around, hostage video, Linda Blink. Screw that. She's complicit. She's part of this. She believes in this. No more Linda is the hostage. Linda is a grown person with a great resume, and she's 100% responsible for this action. And ultimately, if advertisers and marketers end up agreeing with her, which seems very unlikely, I think that'll be great for her. But most likely case is she's just dynamiting bridges left and right.
Okay. Mark, any perspective on this one?
No, I signed out of Twitter 3 or 4 years ago. I have no real perspective on this.
You did?
Oh, yeah. I deleted my account a while ago. I didn't want everything I've said back in 2000, when you and I were saying stupid shit to each other. I didn't want that to ever, not that we're doing anything bad, but I just didn't want anyone to ever be able to see that again. My complaining about the Jets and stuff.
Mark, didn't you troll me on Twitter? Didn't you have your bio was the uninfluencer in ad tech or something?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. Or that might have been on LinkedIn.
I noticed it one day and I was like, wow, that was just sitting there waiting for me to see for a very long time.
Yeah, it was. And you did.
Mannino should come back to ad tech Twitter.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's a must. To bring it home to what you said about, you're basically sealing the fate of brand advertising and brand advertisers never coming back to X with this. I think that perhaps that's the fate anyway. And it's going to be a platform that's got if it survives, different monetization, probably a long tail of, advertisers that they're already, kind of seeing most of the revenue from today that are just, bidding for contextual placements. And, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think the main timeline never really attracted brand advertisers. Most of the brand dollars were in syndication deals they had with the NBA and other sports groups, where they would run a clip from a recent game and then there'd be a pre-roll essentially within it. And I understand there was reporting that type of initiative has been dwindling because most of the partnership people were let go. You could imagine the same brand safety stuff would apply to sports as it would apply to anything else.
Yeah.
I think that's right. One last thing. If it worked, the money would be flowing there. Exactly. So, people would be, the next topic you're going to talk about is things that work and are kind of skeevy and people spend. So if this worked, the money would be there and we'd all be figuring out how to spend more.
there have been so many boycotts of Facebook and Meta, and everyone just comes back.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of skeevy, good transition, Mark Mannino. So we've got a brand safety issue here. Analytics, who's been just crushing it for the past year or so, finding lots of dirty stuff, found more dirty stuff. So I'll summarize the article and the issue here, and we can talk about it. So the site in question is Fandom. Fandom, if you've never spent any time on it, is the world's largest fan wiki platform. According to the company, 99.92% of the site is, presumably or allegedly brand safe. 0.08% of the site has quote unquote unsavory content, largely from old links, and in many cases violate their terms of service. So basically, Analytics found some absolutely ridiculous placements and just had screenshot after screenshot of brands allegedly running ads on the site. This is where it gets a little bit wonky from an ad tech perspective. So Fandom is on many allow lists because it's well trafficked and has, a lot of like interesting engagement placements allegedly, but the keyword blocking and brand safety tech didn't catch the bad placements, and they were super bad. So I think there was a really important video that was released yesterday on this topic from Marketecture on TikTok that everybody should watch. It's a minute long, and I think breaks this down really, really well. And then DV, who's one of the brand safety vendors that was called out here, I think they also had like a very good response here, sort of like explaining their side of it. But this is a mess. Like the keywords, there's a reason why the TikTok was, funnily enough, like completely bleeped out because the keywords were really, really bad.
Yeah, the keywords were really, really bad. IS also put out a response. I'm going to summarize the response, which I think is interesting, which was effectively, just because our tags were on the page does not mean that the advertisers in questions were using us as a pre-block or a post-block. Mm-hmm. And in addition, the other thing they pointed out was that even when they have a block, advertisers can add exceptions to the block. So there is no way to just look at a web page, see bad content, see an IS tag, and assume IS has fallen down at the job. That's basically the point that both IS and DV made, which is effectively a methodology argument against what Analytics is showing. And Analytics is always very, very careful to say, here's what we found. You interpret it how you wish. But the interpretation that this is a massive disaster of the verification companies is not really confirmed by the evidence.
It demonstrates the Sisyphean task of DV and IAS, right? I mean, they are trying to identify what's good and what's bad. The fact of the matter is, if you're on let's say you're a gun site, right? Or there's two people on gun sites, right? People who are interested in guns and Analytics who are trying to catch ads on gun sites, right? So this is really challenging to find this and figure this out. And I think that the brands themselves need to take some ownership of where their ads run, right? I mean, I'd never been on Fandom, but because of this article, I went there, and there's I don't think I got to the, whatever the wiki pages, but I was on like tvguide.com and some other things that apparently they own. The ad experience is terrible. It's a disaster. There were like 20, as you scroll down, they just kept generating Verizon Fios ads. So it was probably like 30 or 40 impressions just for Verizon Fios. Like, take some ownership of how your ads look and where they run. And I would have Fandom off my list completely, and I'd never run there because there's enough supply out there that you can find good supply. So I think I don't know if it's all the way fake news, but it's such a small little percentage. And of course, guys like this are going to figure out how to retarget and find something that is bad.
I also spoke to some folks at the verification companies off the record. And one thing I heard was that these companies in some cases have grown sort of inorganically or like leaps and bounds and been very sales oriented. And in some cases, the pre-bid technology doesn't match exactly the blocking technology. They might have been built separately. They may not 100% agree. And there's just a lot of work that they both need to do to kind of catch up tech side to what the expectations are of their customers.
Well, and a lot of it's qualitative, right? Like, you never hear anything about this on viewability, right? Which they do. Right? No one ever goes, they're unviewable. because it's very you can literally say it's very, but this is qualitative. Like, I mean, the MFA sites is another one that they've gotten themselves into. And how do you define that? So it's really a struggle.
How does the industry fix this once and for all?
I think the buyers have to fix it. If you're giving money to a vendor, you get to set expectations. And I think that's sort of Analytics' business model is they take the log files from the customer and double check the double checkers and find out what's not working. And so more and more of that, of setting standards. It'd be interesting if, I don't know if this is the case, if agency holding companies have standards that they expect to hold these companies to in terms of accuracy rate, alpha and beta errors, that sort of thing. I think that's definitely where the money comes from.
And take greater control. I mean, with all the stuff going on nowadays with PMPs and curation and things like that, I think years ago, we used to be surprised our ad was on a site. That really shouldn't be happening anymore. So just take greater control.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's interesting. Both of you guys pointed to buy-side tactics being the solve here. And to your point, Mark, with the rise in curation and PMP, with the TTD SP 500 plus, there's no excuse, I think, to have, ads running just like in the wild on the internet and claim that, I had no idea that, my vendor or my partner put me on this site. So I think it's a great opportunity for agencies. Like it really is. I saw Jay Friedman, who we've had on the pod before, he had some stuff to say about this one. And, I recall in his post, he said, good way clients were not mentioned here. Good way clients are never on these things because we've got, a process here at the agency to really take hold of this. So I think that's right. That's the answer. What else you guys want to talk about? So we've got Roku is embracing UID2. We've got Uber on $1 billion run rate, as they predicted. Where do you want to go?
We had Dr. Mark on Marketecture about 6 months ago, and he made that point where they were at like 500 million at the time. So good for them. That's an amazing achievement.
Yeah, we had Danilo Taro on. It was just a few weeks ago. Who's the GM of ads for Uber Eats, which is a really big part of this. And he was talking about all of the areas that they've yet to sort of tap into to grow this thing, and makes me think there's a bunch of growth ahead on the Uber stuff. I guess, is there another vertical? Because this isn't necessarily an RMN. Is there another vertical media player that you guys are thinking about that is the next $1 billion advertising business? And maybe it is an RMN.
Well, next week on the pod, we have an expert in travel, and I'm very interested in hearing what they have to say, because travel, in a sense, has been like the first player. They've been doing retail media of some kind for 20 years almost, Expedia and places like that. So I think that's an area that a lot of people forget about because there's so much commerce and it's kind of off to the side.
I would take you're going to limit your thinking if you keep the word retail in there.
Right. Which is why I try to use vertical.
It's closed loop media. So think of who can close the loop, right? So like Uber's business, Danilo's business is retail media because he's selling shit that gets delivered to your house. But driving around in an Uber and seeing an ad for something isn't really, right? But they can close the loop because they know I don't know, I guess your Uber went to that restaurant or that store or something. So, but if you think of closed loop, because the Chases and the Marriotts and the United, they're not retail, but they're closed loop. They can do things like that. So think of who has big business, who hasn't closed the loop. That's how you're going to find who the next ones are.
Keep going there, Mark. So give another example besides travel. Like what's another category that...
well, the credit cards, but they've been trying forever. Like MasterCard's been doing this for 12, 15 years, right? And but they've only been selling data. So who has interesting stuff but actually has transactions happening somewhere down the path that can do it? I don't really know how United does it because, anyone in financial services.
Square.
Right? Yeah. So PayPal, Venmo, things like that. Although I think they're the same company.
Yeah, Dr. Mark moved to PayPal off of
that's right. Yeah, exactly.
I think we have our answer. It's going to be PayPal.
Yeah.
Just take the playbook.
Yeah, he seems to be good at picking them since I worked with him at Amazon, right? So he seems to be going down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. So follow and bet on Dr. Mark. Okay, guys, this has been great. I think we've filled the quota. So why don't we take it home, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great show. So, Mark Mannino, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun. Let's do it again.
Eric Franchi, good seeing you as always.
Thank you, guys. Great to see you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for subscribing to Marketecture. New interviews are added every week at marketecture.tv and your favorite podcasting app.
Thank you for listening to the Marketecture Podcast. New episodes come out every Friday, and an insightful vendor interview is published each Monday. You can subscribe to our library of hundreds of executive interviews at marketecture.tv. You can also sign up for free for our weekly newsletter with my original strategic insights on the week's news at news.marketecture.tv. And if you're feeling social, we operate a vibrant Slack community that you can apply to join at adtechgod.com.